Today's February 9th, 2025. My name is Wallace Francis. Donald Trump was elected president this year, and since that period of time, he has done exactly what people predicted he would do. He has placed people in positions of power and authority that he knows will have very little compunction about not doing as he asks. He hired Pete Hegseth at the Department of Defense. He's now the Secretary of Defense. Congress, who's basically a Stalinist rubber stamp committee at this point, basically approved it glowingly. And the guy's a non-serious person. If you know anything about Pete Hegseth, he's just a major. You know, he's a guy with a drinking problem. He's a Fox News host. The guy's a complete clown. And he's got no business running a department of that size and that magnitude. He's never had that kind of responsibility. He wouldn't know what to do with it. He's not going to understand probably 80% of the things out there that he needs to understand. He's simply not smart enough and not qualified enough to do the job. On the other hand, there's Pam Biondi, who is now the Attorney General, and she is clearly smart enough to do the job, and she's more like a J.D. Vance type of character, which is, at some point she decided her career was more important than democracy, and she is also going to be doing almost everything that Donald Trump tells her, which is an odd position to be in because, you have spent all of this time tearing down the government and now you're in charge of the government. And your whole position has been the government is bad. So it's hard to know exactly what she is going to do because you can't say the same things about her that you can say about Pete Hegseth in terms of her qualifications and her abilities. She's an attorney of no small magnitude. But again, the fact that she would support Donald Trump says everything that you need to know about her. And in fact, it says everything you need to know about anybody. It shows a fundamental misunderstanding of the way that things work. And at the same time, a detachment from reality. We've got Tulsi Gabbard over there, who's about to be appointed the head of the CIA. And she was over there meeting the Syrian dictator Assad. She's created all of these records out there of her interacting with the Russians, of saying all of these things that are in favor of the Russians. And she is also an equally unserious person. She's a Democrat from Hawaii who's now become a Benedict Arnold type character and has decided that she's going to become a Republican. So again, the major factor there is her career, which she's decided is more important than democracy. The most dangerous person out of all of these people, though, by far is Elon Musk, who at some point during COVID decided that he was going to make a determination about how the government was bad. He is very upset, I understand, from the COVID restrictions that shut his factories down. And the guy has always seen himself as the center of the universe. He's the kind of guy who's got to be the bride at every wedding and the body at every funeral in terms of being at the center of everything. And that's sort of how he's gotten into this position that he's gotten into. He's a bullshitter. He's not an idiot, but he's also not really a genius. He's just a guy who started out with a lot of money and made more money by being in the right place at the right time with the right people. He's not a stupid man, not by any measure, but he kind of sees himself, and I'm taking this from what I've heard people who've interviewed him say, which is he sees himself as like a video game character, and we're all sort of like, characters in the video game, and he's the hero. And so he sees himself somehow as going in and saving the day by coming in and creating all of this havoc, as though the government was some kind of company that needed to be saved, But of course, as you recall, he didn't even do that with X, which was formerly Twitter. He came in there and he basically devalued that company after spending too much money. But now I begin to look at the decision for him to acquire that, and I begin to wonder, at what point did he decide that he was going to come in and try to make a play for having a position of power in the government? Because X is an incredibly important propaganda tool in the hands of the wrong people. And because it's such a powerful propaganda tool, it would make sense for him to acquire it with a plan of him imposing himself somehow into the government. And with him coming in and sort of stealing the show with Trump, it all sort of starts to take shape. So what's happening right now that is most alarming is the fact that Musk has brought in a bunch of 20-something kids, some of them openly racist, who have some computer ability and are able to go in and write code and basically work on the computers. They've been inside the Treasury Department, and recently a injunction was granted by a federal judge preventing them from continuing whatever it is that they're doing in the Treasury Department. And nobody really knows exactly what they're doing. They haven't been transparent about it. There's no real explanation for it. And it's a little bit like the time that he bought X and then went in there and was sleeping there all day, every day, and was sending out dictatorial emails and threatening and firing people and acting like he was, working 80 hours a week or whatever bullshit story that he tells people about how hard he works. And this is more of the same. So the scary part of all of this is that if they decide to ignore the injunction, first of all, how's anybody going to know? Because the Democratic senators who showed up at, for example, the Department of Education to try to kick them out of the doors, didn't have the guts to push aside the clown that was standing in front of the doors and go inside, okay? Which is actually something that I'll talk about in a minute. So we don't really know what's going on inside the Treasury Department or the Department of Education, which Trump has admitted he wants to completely destroy. We know that U.S. aid is now basically defunct. There's maybe 200 employees left. And so all of the soft power that the United States was attempting to generate over this period of time is now going to go to China. And while Trump is busy trying to make Canada a 51st state and acquire Greenland and Panama. But the main point here is an injunction would be something that would be a court order. And so if Musk and his boys are under a court order to basically follow the instructions and not do any further work in the Treasury Department, what's to stop them? Because these are the kind of guys, and Trump is the kind of guy who they do what they want until somebody stops them. And then they keep doing it until somebody stops them. So what would be the answer to this would be, the court would issue a contempt citation, and I would imagine it would be the FBI or a law enforcement agency would have to go and it would have to issue a warrant for their arrest for a violation of a court order, contempt of court, or sanctions, monetary sanctions. And of course, the richest man in the world isn't going to be afraid of monetary sanctions. And Donald Trump has never been afraid of monetary sanctions because, of course, who's the FBI run by? It's run by the executive branch, who is Donald Trump. So what you see happening here is a slow-moving coup where all of the arms of the government, the checks and balances that existed are slowly and surely being eroded away and stripped away. And all of us are going to be left holding the bag, and we're going to wake up one day and realize that there is nothing left of whatever democracy we had before. And so that's where I come to the main point, which I'm going to be conveying in every video after that, is that there needs to be action, direct action. And there needs to be people who are willing to do the things that need to be done to protect the government. If you go back through history and you see these particular moments in history, there was a moment where when Adolf Hitler rose to power in Nazi Germany, there was a lot of hand slapping that the government did. They arrested him, they released him, they arrested his people, they released them. His brown shirts went out there and committed violence against people who opposed them. And that's one of the things that Donald Trump did. He released 1,500 people from the January 6th arrests. And of course, those people are going to be dedicated and willing to commit violence on his behalf because they already got away with it. And that's what they believe is the correct thing to do in this particular instance. The Democratic Party is, without question, the wrong party to be handling this situation. They sit around giving speeches and writing letters, and that is sort of the issue with liberal democracy in general, is that when it comes across a threat that is authentic, then they have no ability to take direct action to protect it. They're so used to engaging in the process that they return to the process. They insist that the process is something that needs to be worked out. But now you have not only an FBI and a Department of Justice and law enforcement arms that are taken over by the government. Even if the courts issue orders, you have a Supreme Court over them that is issuing expansive orders regarding presidential immunity that have basically given Donald Trump a pass. So the bad news is that everybody in the United States, whether they like it or not, is facing a government that is slowly but surely eroding away all of their rights. And it's time to take direct action. It's time for people to take to the streets and to do something about this.